cannibals. Child killers. What's wrong with you? You're a Zionist, that's your problem.
October 7 changed my world, turned my world upside down, as it has for many British Jews and Jews around the world. I saw that there was a party going on outside the Israeli embassy in Kensington. I remember the shock and the horror of thinking that people were actually celebrating this massacre of innocent people, this massacre of children, of people who were simply at a party, and there were fireworks, and there was hatred. And since then, I've had a kind of dual role in writing a bit about the war and a lot about anti-Semitism in this country.
Go back to Israel!
My name's Nicole Lampert. I'm a freelance journalist. I've written an investigation into anti-Semitism in London. From the moment I started writing about anti-Semitism, I started getting anti-Semitism online. Horrendous stuff. People would send me swastikas mixed with the Star of David. They would call me a fascist, Zionist bitch. Scum, apartheid lover, baby killer. That was online. I have a history of some anti-Semitism, but for most of my life, hardly any. When I was a school child, I was uninvited from someone's house when their parent had found out I was Jewish, and they started calling me a dirty Jew. Then they would stand behind me in PE lessons and say, "Oh, I don't want to go behind you, you're a dirty Jew." But generally, that had been my anti-Semitic experience until October 7. And people then started messaging me about what was going on, and people very quickly started sending me their experiences of what was going on in the schools, the universities. They were sending me pictures of hateful messages, and it then just continued, and I started looking particularly at schools. That was one kind of growth area. Children were being attacked, they were beaten up, they were being bullied in school. Even in those very early days, there were parents who spoke to me and said, "I think we're going to have to move our children." There were Palestine flags going up everywhere, even before Israel had retaliated. And although in some ways, of course, I can understand people want to support Palestinians, I don't think they realise how that feels to us, like that means you're against me, that you hate me. And of course, for Londoners, the demonstrations were a massive issue. From the start, it was clear that there was anti-Semitism on these demonstrations. And even if lots of people were there for the right reasons, they wanted peace, there was a huge cohort of people who were happy to have anti-Semitic placards and to call for jihad and call for the eradication of the Jewish state by singing "From the River to the Sea."
From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
So one of the people I spoke to for my pieces, she lived in Islington and considered herself at the heart of a kind of diverse community. Her husband is Asian, she wasn't really part of the Jewish community, she works in the theatre, so she has a lot of LGBTQ+ friends, and she would have these mad parties. And then she described how on October the 8th, she saw all her neighbours putting Palestine flags up. And I think it's quite hard to explain the connection Jewish people have with Israel. And that's because there's only 15 million Jews in the entire world, and more than half of them live in Israel. And even people who didn't think of themselves as particularly Jewish or care that much about Israel or think about it, they saw this massacre, which upset them because feels like your cousins almost. And then they saw the reaction, which was joy at the murder of Jews. And I think that's what affected her and lots of other people who really didn't consider themselves very Jewish, weren't part of the kind of bigger community, as it were. Quite a lot of Jews, some are hiding and others are doing the opposite. They are wearing Stars of David, they wear a yellow hostage ribbon. And sometimes she told me how she literally got it from her jewellery box from when she was a child. And it was a necklace with Hebrew writing on. And she talked about how she was on the bus and two young women with hijabs came to talk to her, and because her stepdaughter had grown up in the area, she thought it might be two girls that she knew. Then instead they weren't, they said Jew, and then they spat at her. And then she talked about how later on there'd always been a menorah, which is a kind of candelabra that's part of the Hanukkah festival. Quite a few London boroughs have them out, and how within a day in Islington it had been dismantled. And this helped her decide she had to leave London, which is one of the most depressing things in my article, I think, that children are having to leave schools and people feel they have to leave London. I think stories like that show that there is perhaps this wonderful melting pot that we imagine we live in. It's not one community, it's lots of different communities, and when you've got a war that is as divisive as what's going on in Israel and Palestine, then it can create more problems between communities. So I wouldn't compare the experience that I have as a white-looking Jewish woman to someone who's of colour. They will face different types of hatred. I know from my black friends, they get followed around shops, things like that. And if you are brown, you may get Islamophobia, that sort of thing. I don't get that. But what we have is called passing white. So we might look white, although often I'm asked where I'm from, because I don't look typically blonde and tall and British, but I won't get the same type of racism, but I'll get a different type of racism. So I'll get called a Jewish princess, or I'll be, obviously the things I've talked about, I'll be called a Nazi or a baby killer or an apartheid lover.
What's wrong with you? You're a Zionist, that's your problem. You like depravity and death and torture. People.
One pattern that surprised me that I hadn't really come across before was this idea of spitting. So 3 of the case studies that I spoke to had all been spat at, which is quite shocking, just the idea of just spitting at a stranger. Another is just vandalism, and one of the more chilling case studies is this woman called Natalie, who when she goes for dog walks, she knows that there's someone who's watching her, knows where she walks, and has written Natalie baby killer, Natalie IDF lover. So that's chilling, that she knows that there's someone who's watching where she's walking and is deliberately writing stuff to upset her. It's coming from all over the place. So social media is obviously a big pusher. For TikTok, it's been recognised that it particularly pushes anti-Semitic content. I spend a lot of my time on X, and I get the worst sort of hate, and none of that is ever taken down. For us Londoners, I would like to hear our mayor speak out against anti-Semitism. For too long, we've seen anti-Semitism on the marches. For too long, we've seen anti-Semitism in schools, we've seen anti-Semitism on the streets, and we have not heard enough from him. He, as a prominent Muslim man, and as someone who is the mayor for the entire capital city, should be saying more. One of the things that worries me is that the Holocaust itself, last year we found a number of councils that didn't mention Jews when they mentioned the Holocaust. So for me, Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is part of the curriculum in January, it should be a day to learn about anti-Semitism as well, and to learn about how the same kind of hatred that led to the Holocaust is leading to hatred against Jews now. But instead what we're getting is that the Holocaust has become a kind of catch-all definition for let's not hate people, which doesn't help. So that would be a solution for me. It feels like we're at epidemic levels. New figures came out just this week from the Community Security Trust, which looks after the security for Jewish communities, and we're at a new high. So while it massively peaked after October 7, we're at a new normal where it's about twice as bad as it's ever been in the past. And even when the war is over, and I hope that war will be over soon, I worry that it won't ever go back to figures that it was before Corbyn, perhaps, that it will go back to the kind of figures where it exists, but only in a small number of cases.